Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony today. President Trump has described his July 25th phone call with President Zelensky as quote, perfect. And I think he's done that on Twitter, not once, not twice, but by my count, 11 times. It feels to me like this characterization of perfect is of a piece with the idea that we hear in defense of the president's request to the Ukrainians, that's just normal course of business pursuing anti-corruption. And I've been concerned from the start that this is actually not about going after corruption. It is, in fact, about aiming corruption at the vice president. Mr. Morrison, you listened in on the call in the White House Situation Room. Did you hear the president mention the company CrowdStrike and the server?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Did you hear President Trump mention the Bidens?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear President Trump in the length of that phone call use the word corruption?
No, sir. Sir, I don't believe he did.
Was the request that Ukraine investigate CrowdStrike and the Bidens consistent with what you understood to be official U.S. policy towards combating corruption in Ukraine?
Sir, it was the first I heard of much of this.
In fact, in your deposition, you testified that you wanted to stay away from what you described as this, quote, bucket of investigations. Why did you want to stay away from those issues?
That was what I was advised by Dr. Hill.
You also testified that the president's call was not, and I'm quoting you here, the full-throated endorsement of the Ukraine reform agenda that I was hoping to hear. What did you mean by that?
Sir, what we, myself, Colonel Vindman, others, what we prepared in the package we provided the president was background on President Zelensky, background on his positions about reforming Ukraine, reforming its institutions, rooting out corruption. We were hoping, we recommended the president very clearly support what President Zelensky had run on in his own election and what his Servant of the People Party had run on in its election where it received a majority mandate.
But that didn't come up in the call, did it?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any other discussion in which the president actually raised those things with the new Ukrainian president?
Corruption reform?
Yes.
Sir, it's been some time since I refreshed myself on the discussion that took place at the UN General Assembly, so I hesitate to say did he ever raise it, but he did not raise it at the time of the 25 July phone call.
Okay. Switching gears a little bit, you strike me as a process guy, and it's nagging at me because you characterized the Ambassador Sondland's linking in whatever way it happened of aid to an investigation as the Gordon problem. You said it caused you to roll your eyes. Ambassador Volker said it was everybody in the July 10th meeting thought it was inappropriate. John Bolton characterizes this as the drug deal. So it seems like everybody in the room understands that there's a huge problem here. My understanding is that it would be normal course of business when you have an ambassador out there going rogue, as apparently there was consensus Ambassador Sondland was doing, that either the National Security Advisor John Bolton or the Secretary of State might rein them in. Why didn't that happen?
Sir, I can't speak to that, but I would generally agree that ambassadors work for the Secretary of State and the President.
Do you have, you don't have any idea, you worked for him, you don't have any idea why John Bolton would characterize what the ambassador was doing as a drug deal, but not rein him in?
Ambassadors don't work for the National Security Advisor, sir.
No, but John Bolton's National Security Advisor, he presumably spends time with the Secretary of State. I'm just puzzled that everybody in the room is, characterizing this as the Gordon problem or inappropriate or a drug deal, and the Secretary of State does nothing.
Sir, I'm sorry, was there a question?
Well, yeah, you don't have any insight into that?
No, sir.
Ambassador Volker, you testified that you were troubled once you read the record of the president's July 25th call. You testified, quote, that asking the president of Ukraine to work together with the attorney general to look into this, you can see as it has happened, this becomes explosive in our domestic politics. And in your new testimony, you call this unacceptable. What specifically in that call to the Ukraine president do you find unacceptable or troubling?
It is the reference to Vice President Biden.
Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.